Because you go from working maybe 40 hours a week your whole life, and you got to fill those hours with stuff you love to do. And now's the time. You control your day, you control your time. I think it's one of the best freedoms to do whatever you want when you want.
Welcome back to Plan to Rise Above, powered by PMG Wealth Management. This is episode 3. We think you're going to want to stay for this one because it's going to be very important, especially if you are 5 to 10 years away from retirement.
This is for everybody. You might only be 22 years old or 28 years old, but at some point I'm sure you want to walk away and retire, so you might as well pay attention.
We've seen people on the flip where they have more than enough to retirement and they just want some reassurance. Every dollar, as we keep talking about, needs a home. Those homes might be a little bit different as you get older.
It should be where you connect your financial plan to your dream life. It's what you were working towards your whole life.
It's never too early to start and get on the right track. Phil has seen people start retirement and finish retirement successfully, so we're gonna go into how we run some of these numbers for people.
Welcome back to Plan to Rise Above, powered by PMG Wealth Management. This is episode 3, and we think you're going to want to stay for this one because it's going to be very important, especially if you are 5 to 10 years away from retirement.
Nice.
We are back with George Marudas and Phil Guerrero, and I'm Ryan Zenz.
This is for everybody. You might only be 22 years old or 28 years old, but at some point I'm sure you want to walk away and retire, so you might as well pay attention. But more specifically, yes, if you're within 5 to 10 years, this is more for you. And what we're talking about is why the 5 years before retirement are so important, and what are some tips and tricks, essentially, or things that you should be looking at to focus on during that time frame. So get your pencil out and pad of paper, and here we go. So where do we want to start with that, George?
I'd say we start with topic number 1. We want to make sure we're running the numbers for our clients. We want to sit down, know exactly what you have, know exactly what you need to do, and just have a team behind you to help make those decisions and help guide you through retirement, because those first few years are going to be the most important. And we've been working with clients for a number of years now, and Phil has seen people start retirement and finish retirement successfully. So we're going to go into how we run some of these numbers for people.
Yeah, and I guess one thing I want to add before we get to that is we've also had our slew of phone calls where people come in maybe 6 months to a year before retirement, and they've never done a plan. They really basically just say, hey, I'm 62, I get to retire. And it's not really how it works, right? Or they're like, hey, I'm 65, I'm done. They've never done the math, and we end up doing the math, and we're like, oh my gosh, like, I hate to break it to you, but this is not happening. It might be another year or another 5 years or so. But this is why we like to say 5 years out is probably the time you really need to start looking at it and crunching those numbers. So I would just say, yeah, while bullet point 1 is knowing and reviewing your numbers, I would add a little caveat under that we are starting 5 years out, not 12 months out, because, again, a lot of people just make assumptions, and you know what happens when you make an assumption. So exactly. So we don't want to do that, and we want to be able to get ahead of it. So we got to, know your numbers. And so where do we kind of go with that, I guess?
I was going to say one more thing. We've seen people on the flip where they have more than enough to retirement and they just want some reassurance. So there's that too. There's some people that are underprepared, and then there's people that are overprepared and just need to say, hey, I want a team to double check and follow things along as I go through retirement.
Yeah, so this might be a little checklist for you. Just check it off. If you've already done it, great. Then just follow along for the rest of it.
Okay, perfect. And so if we're running the numbers, I guess, so what are we expecting people to typically bring in, right? I mean, we're looking at all their statements. Do we expect them to have a completed net worth statement themselves? They don't have to put that together.
No.
Right? I mean,
we help them do is get organized. So we help them take a look at all their accounts, their investments, their assets, real estate, everything of that nature. And first and foremost, we start with the net worth, and then we work our way down. Like if you have, $2 million, how much can you pull from that portfolio every year? And then how much should you be invested in XYZ versus something else? So we're going to look at it from first the net worth and then start digging deeper into that figure.
That's a good point, George. Again, so we're going to dig into the net worth a little bit. We want to see, exactly where the income is coming from. So that's another piece of knowing where your numbers are. What is your Social Security? Do you happen to have any pensions? Are you sitting in CDs only? Are you sitting in a savings account? How much is in your checking account? What is in your 401k plan? What is in your profit sharing plan? If these things apply, right? Do you have a deferred comp plan? So we want to go through all those different buckets and tally up all those figures. And that could be exciting, obviously, because again, if you've done it well, this is where you've kind of built up a level of assets that gets to be pretty impressive. And you're like, hey, I've got this behemoth, this army of numbers behind me that I think I can walk away and not have to actually go to my 9-to-5 job anymore, right? So that's kind of cool.
Yeah, and the flip side too, you need to know how much you're spending. So one of the things we work on with clients is making a realistic retirement budget. I would say on average, people are spending now anywhere from 100 to 120,000. And then, like Phil said, we're looking at the Social Security. Maybe that's between two spouses combined 50,000. They might have a pension that could be another 30,000, or a lot of people now don't have pensions. And then we got to fill that gap. So let's say, for example, a client, one spouse is 30,000 in Social Security, the other's 40. That's 70 right there, and their spending need is 100,000. So we have a gap of 30,000 that we got to figure out where's that money coming from, what account, can their portfolio sustain those withdrawal rates, and that's what we mean by run the numbers. We're double checking that's going to last them through 100.
Yeah, very good. And then, again, some people, you just brought up 100, right? So I just want to touch on that. Not everybody's going to live to 100, obviously. We would all like to. We're trying to get healthier these days. I don't know if you can tell, I'm doing carnivore a little bit more, so that's good. But yeah, you want to live a little longer. But we do know that life expectancy is not age 100 by any means. But at the same time, I like to joke with people, like, we don't want to be the ones knocking on the door at age 82 and going, hey, guess what today, Jim? You got to sell your house today, right? Or today's moving day, you ran out of money. And, so we obviously will over plan to a degree just to make sure that you're safe and that we feel comfortable with your plan, right? But I think, again, like I say, like we go back to bullet point number 1 is you have to know your numbers, run your numbers. A lot of people just don't do that, right? They just kind of haphazardly go, here's what I got, and I don't even know what I've got. And sometimes we meet with people and it'll take people sometimes 20 minutes to pull their statements together, and they just have in piles, and they're like, I'm like, what's the balance on the 401k plan? And they can't even give me a number, right? Which is kind of interesting. Like, how do you not know your number? And maybe that's a different conversation. But again, like, I think if you're serious about talking about retirement, we want you to focus, especially on those 5 years prior to when you want to do it. And, and then again, you need to know your numbers. So that's kind of where we're at on the bullet point number 1, right?
And I will say, like, stress and money go hand in hand. So, like, we're here to help make some of that stress go away for our clients. So yeah, that's something that we really preach and we really practice with our clients.
Yep. And then the bullet point number 2, right, is kind of the fun part. If you've done it well, you get to a point where compound interest is finally doing the heavy lifting, right? So, so obviously, again, you've built up this nest egg, and let's just say you've got $2 million to keep the math a little bit easier. The stock market, it does tend to double every 7 to 10 years. If all of a sudden you've got $2 million today, depending on, we'll just keep life easy with no withdrawals, maybe 7 to 10 years from now, you might have, $4 million, and 7 to 10 years later, you would hopefully have $8 million, and so on and so forth. But one of the negatives to that, emotionally, you got to get to a point too where you recognize that compound interest is doing the heavy lifting, which is your friend, but also the volatility of the stock market is pretty big. Historically, it's around 16%, but let's just keep, again, the math easy. A 10% pullback in the market on a $2 million figure is how much?
200,000.
200,000, right? So, and somebody might have been working their entire lives and they've never made 200,000, right? So essentially, right, you're going to have swings that are much, much bigger than what you actually made working 40 hours a week. So emotionally, right, you got clients that come in day one or their first recession into their retirement stage and they're like, oh my gosh, the market went down 15%. Well, again, on a $2 million portfolio, that's 300,000. And all of a sudden they're like, well, holy crap, like does 2 million minus 300,000 mean I'm going to be out of money in like 7 months? And that's not how it works, right? But you got to get comfortable with it. Like, hey, like pat yourself on the back. Like you've built a nest egg that is moving, 200 to 300,000 or 400,000, which again, if you've built your life correctly financially, you will have your money move bigger than what it did when you were working and busting your butt 40 to 50 hours a week, right?
Yeah, and it's normal to feel uncomfortable because your whole life you were building that portfolio and you never reached that level where those swings were more than you make. So don't feel like you're out of place or you're doing something wrong. That is completely normal. It's okay. It's something that we're going to help you manage. We're going to hopefully mirror those investments back to your goals and make sure they're not too risky.
Anything you want to add there, Ryan?
Yeah, I mean, look at Warren Buffett, one of the greatest traders, investors of all time. He accumulated 99% of his wealth after 50. That's the proof of compounding is doing its job. He's investing in the market. He's putting money towards it. And compound interest is doing its job, building it and making this a huge amount of wealth for him. And you just got to kind of copy that with yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So again, one, we're running the numbers. Two, we're getting to a point where you're seeing compound interest work for you. You're starting to see the wave. I like to tell people, think like the ocean. You see the wave go up and go down, but there seems to be some normal routine to it when you step back a little bit. And again, at times, like when you're dealing with bad news, like you might be like, oh my gosh, it's going down. But if you kind of step back a little bit, you see, okay, the tide comes in, the tide goes out, the wave goes up, the wave goes down, and you kind of you gradually get through it, and life goes on. But you've successfully built an asset base that is providing the income that you want. So and ideally, like we like to, you mentioned people are getting to wanting $120,000 a year to live on. So then that means that we might need a portfolio that's closer to $3 million. Going off of that 4% withdrawal rate rule, and that would give us, $120,000 a year to live on, not including Social Security. So again, in that frame, somebody's got to be worried about seeing their accounts go up 300,000, down 300,000, up 450, down 450. If you get a 20% pullback, that's a $600,000 swing. You're going to have to be ready to feel that and to be kind of okay with it, right? Which is not something that a lot of people are used to. But I view that as a sign of success that you've built that kind of level of assets in the first place, right?
So, for example, like if we had a client walk in the door and let's say they have a net worth of $5 million and they said, hey, Phil, how much can I spend or, when can I retire? What would be the next step for that client?
Yeah, so I mean, like I would love to say, well, on the flip side, that would be like, yeah, well, what do you need? What's your normal spending routine? Let's look at your expenses. Let's add up everything that you're going through every month, essentially, and we'll start to dig into that budget a little bit. We obviously use our budget sheets, and we get those to people to start working on. And again, like somebody with $5 million of assets, they may not have a formal budget by any means, right? They're like, hey, I've been making money my whole life. I don't need to do a budget. I live within this. But again, if we're talking about retirement, if we're talking about no paycheck, theoretically, right? Like at that point, I want you to double check. I want you to say, okay, well, what do I really need? So let's add up those bills and let's add up the hypothetical, 3 to 5 vacations a year that somebody at that level might be taking. And what do those vacations cost? And, just throw everything you can at it. And try to figure out what we actually need each month to survive, and then obviously multiply that by 12 to get the yearly figure, and then we'll work backwards from there. Because I could say on $5 million at 4%, that's $200,000 a year. But you might have somebody like we have a lot of those typical millionaire next doors that are, they're not spending $200,000 a year. They're living on $60,000, right, or 70 or 80. That's how they got to the $5 million in the first place. Because they've been socking away $100,000 a year. They've been saving $8,000 a month for a long, long time, and that's how they got the $5 million anyway. So their needs might be really tiny.
Yeah, and I would say one of the hardest things is making that switch from a spender or from a saver to a spender. And a lot of times we're giving clients that nudge. We're saying, I think even recently we had a client that wanted to go to Hawaii, and we're like, that fits well within your big picture. Like, go ahead and do it. So just back to the reinsurance and taking the stress away. Like, yes, that's a good decision. Use that money that you work so hard to enjoy those experiences with your family, with your friends. And that's where at times we come into play.
We're going to go to bullet point number 2 with Ryan.
Yeah, so bullet point number 2 is now's the time to optimize your portfolio. So when you're in your 30s to 40s, a 1 to 2% move in your portfolio might not mean much, but once you get closer to retirement, we want to optimize your portfolio. We want it to make sure it's doing the right things. It's not taking these huge drawbacks into like say you were at the 2 million mark and now it's at the 1.5 mark. We want to make sure you're invested in the right things and the asset allocation aligns with your goals. And we want the risk tolerance a little bit lower than maybe when you were in your 30s to 40s, but we still want to be optimizing every part of your portfolio.
Yeah, and we see a lot from 60 to 70. That's when clients are really spending the most money because they're very healthy, they're traveling, they might have grandkids that they're visiting. So that's a time that we want to line up their portfolio to the timeline. If we know, hey, next year we're taking the family to Greece, that trip might be $30,000, $20,000. We might not want that money invested in something risky. We're going to put that up on the side in maybe something that's more conservative, like a bond fund versus a heavy tech fund, just so it lines up with their goals and their timeline.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then I want to add to there too is that there's a lot out there in the social media world talking about just investing in the S&P 500 only, right? And while we do agree that over time the market's hard to beat and you want to own the market most of the time, there are periods, and this would be one of them, if you're starting to talk about retirement where we may be downshifting, so to speak. We still want to grow the money, but we might be wanting some reduced risk. And what we're doing behind the scenes, right, is we're going to pair that, that risk and that portfolio back to your long-term retirement projection to make sure that those monies last. And the old adage of, well, nobody beats the market all the time, or, you can't beat the S&P over time. Well, that's not necessarily your goal when you're going into retirement. You may not want the full 20% swings of the S&P 500 or, that thereabouts, right? So for some people, like actually minimizing the roller coaster might be a better play. And again, if they've done it well and they have a higher asset base, you can minimize that portfolio even more, right? So that's why you really have to dig into who each individual client is, who each individual household is and what they have. And the basic, well, just buy the index kind of a thing, that's good. That's kind of good advice if you're 25, but I don't think it really necessarily applies at 55 or 65 anymore. And it's great for marketing, but it's not really great for reality in my perspective.
Mm-hmm. And there are periods too, like if we go back to 2000 to 2010, where there's periods the S&P is relatively flat or it hasn't had any growth at all. And people who only own that missed out on emerging markets or real estate or international stock. Other areas that performed well, they just never had exposure to it, and they were just too heavy. So we'll touch on that in another podcast, but just talking about concentration risk and making sure you're diversified.
Number 3, knocking out big expenses while you're still working. I got to hammer on one thing here is, we get a lot of people that knock on the door and they come in and they're like, yeah, I want to retire in 3 years. And they still have 15 years left on their mortgage. In my opinion, that's a mighty big expense for a retiree. In my world, that's the number one thing I would love to see gone, almost as a general rule of thumb. If you're thinking about retirement, and you need to own your house outright. You need to have no mortgage there, right? Now, there are cases where we definitely help people retire, and they might have 5 years left, 3 years left, or even 7 or 8. But, you should be you should be on the downward end of paying off that mortgage, in my opinion, walking into retirement, just because it eats up so much of the fixed income, and then it does end up that expense puts a lot of pressure back on the investment account at some point. So that's one of those things that we like to see. So that's one of those, right? Is knocking out big expenses. I gotta say, mortgage, in my opinion, is number one. What do you got there?
No, I was just saying it depends too on your asset base. I don't mind carrying a retirement or a mortgage into retirement if your asset base is large enough and that rate's very, very low, where we know, tomorrow you could pay it off if you really want to. But you're leveraging that mortgage at 2%, 3%, and you're investing the money elsewhere in hope to either have, more liquidity, potentially better returns. So that's the only case I'd be okay carrying it. If not, I agree with Phil. You want to knock that out before retirement.
Yeah, and also in those 5 final years, you're probably making the most money you've ever have. So that's a big advantage, and it's a like if you're thinking not as big as the mortgage, but like a kitchen remodel or bathroom remodel, taking that from your salary instead of like a retirement savings account, that's way better. And you avoid dipping into your retirement accounts.
Yeah, like Ryan said, like knocking out the car payment, like getting that rid of before retirement. Maybe you need a new roof, fixing your roof before you retire because you're going to have to pay a large chunk out of pocket. That will make retirement a lot less stressful because those lingering large expenses aren't over your head.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the same thing. If you've got 16 months left on a car payment, right? Well, try to hammer out those, speed those up a little bit, right? Hammer that out. So yeah, I mean that's definitely one. Yeah, like you said, that's a good point, Ryan. You said these are probably the highest earning years for most people, right? Is right before you decide to step away. And again, if you're doing it right, you should have some excess cash built into your plan. So theoretically, every month you've got some money that you can deploy somewhere to try to ease that burden when you finally have no paycheck, right?
Yeah.
So,
and one of the biggest expenses we didn't talk about is healthcare. So anyone retiring pre-65, the biggest hurdle a lot of times is what are we doing for health insurance? And that's something, if you're in those 5-10 years leading up to retirement, it's like, all right, what's my plan for health insurance? Am I going to be on COBRA? When am I enrolling Medicare? Am I going to the marketplace? And just knowing exactly what those figures be, because we've seen for people it's $1,200 a spouse, and then that's you're looking at $25,000, $30,000 a year to healthcare. So it's knowing before you say, hey, I'm putting in my 2 weeks, I'm going out the door. Well, where is my health insurance? Like, where is it coming from? And knowing that before.
Yeah, and that kind of leads us into the next bullet point of take advantage of those employee-sponsored programs. Like if you have a surgery you've been putting off for a while, take care of it under your employer's tab and get it handled of.
Yeah, if you need a procedure coming up, get it knocked out of the way while you're still on their plan versus on your own and have a large out-of-pocket expense.
Might as well use it, right? Use it or lose it. So, yeah, that's excellent. And then let's see, we have another one here, which we kind of touched on a little bit, but right, get a clear picture of retirement expenses. And again, we don't expect everybody to go through, line by line and say, okay, my utility bill is, $82.15, but you can round that off and call it 90 or call it 100 or something, right? But you still kind of need to know what's going out the door, right? And again, some of the big expenses are easy to figure out, but even those little ones, those creep into the budget somehow, right?
Yeah, and I think too, one of the hardest things is figuring out exactly what you spend. And the people who really need a budget the most, it's often the hardest to make a budget for them and follow it. So what I like to do is a top-down approach. Take your tax return, say, hey, I made $250,000 last year. I saved $50,000. Where did the rest go? Did I put it into my bank account? If not, it probably got spent. So you're looking at your yearly expenses might be $200,000. You don't even realize it. So there's different ways you can go about. Budget sheets for one of them, but you could also do the flip, what I just talked about, looking at your top figure and just breaking it down from there.
Yeah. And then even right, when we're doing the quick, the quick at the table meeting with clients, right? I mean, we'll just ask, okay, well, what was your net paycheck? And if somebody says, well, I brought in, I get paid $2,000 2 times a month after 401k, after taxes and everything. Okay, I'm like, well, that's $4,000 coming in, and then at that point, I'm like, okay, well, how much are you sending to your savings account? And if that number's zero, I'm like, okay, well, you're essentially spending $4,000 a month then, right? I mean, what else are you, that's essentially what you're living on. And that's, so that's another easy way is just add up your net paychecks, right? Because, that, and then just you would subtract out any planned savings that is coming from there, right? So if you're sending $500 to your savings account or to an investment account somewhere, then obviously you're really living on $3,500 in that example. So that's probably another easy way to do it is just work with the net paycheck of what you're getting, and then technically, if for some weird reason you owed the IRS money at the end of tax season, well then we have to recalculate that.
Yeah.
But for most people, if that's about break even, we could start with that net paycheck math that everybody can kind of do on the back of a napkin. But it is funny though because you have. Somebody might, let's go with a little bit of a bigger number. Somebody might say, well, my net paychecks add up to $10,000, but we have no dedicated monthly savings. But I think I can live on $3,000 a month. Well, then we'll ask them like, well, where's the other $7,000 going? And they have no answer for it because where's it been going? they've been spending it. So
Exactly. And there's some things that you can't budget for. It's like, oh, I got a new furnace or I got a new water system, whatever that might be. And those things kind of always creep up on you. You don't know when they're going to come, and that might be part of that 7,000 that's missing each month, but you don't exactly know what's going to be that next thing that you need money from. But I would say too, also going back to running the numbers, we like to find a base case. So like a base yearly expense, for retirement. And then we want to stress test it. So like if your base case is 100,000, we're going to stress test it up to 150,000. Like when does that plan break? And we're going to just find what number makes the most sense for you.
And it's good. And it's important to try to break it, I think, because, yeah, you need to know where the either the guardrails are, right? That's a term that a lot of people use. I like to use this example of driving down the highway, right? We live outside Chicago. Most of the highways here are 3 lanes. So pretty easy. You got the right lane, kind of the safer lane, the middle lane, a little more aggressive, and the left lane, a little more aggressive. And, right, so you need to know, like, at what point am I jumping into the left shoulder? At what point am I down the ditch? At what point can I slow down and go to the right lane? Right, so I think those are all important things that you need to know because, again, let's go back to the reality of you are now retired at some point in time. Well, what is your paycheck? And if you don't have a paycheck coming in, we're pulling from that asset base. And so we need to know, like, well, what puts that asset base under significant stress? And, and that could be, obviously, the stock market could be one of those. But, your continuous or somebody's need of money is obviously the other big one. So we need to know all that.
Yeah, and your base case might be in the right lane, but it's okay to spend a couple years in the fast lane. It just can't be for the full retirement because then that's when we're going to have those difficult conversations like, hey, we need to dial back a bit. We got to get over to the right, as Phil says, and reduce your spending a little bit back towards the base case.
That's where you might get pulled over by police, Phil, if you're going too fast.
Yeah.
That almost never happens. What are you talking about?
Until yesterday.
I don't know what you're talking about. I was definitely in the right there, and the guy was was not accurate on what my speed limit, what the speed limit was.
No, I was saying
zone.
like if you're in the right lane as a client,
okay,
police Phil might come over or come pull you over.
Okay,
to the right lane or something.
So you're not making a reference to my ticket yesterday?
I was not. Okay. You did that
Phil
yourself.
For the viewers out there, Phil had his first speeding ticket ever or in years?
In years.
Yeah, okay.
Which is surprising.
Yeah. He came in the office a little hot, like saying, hey, this is wrong. Then the way he radared me here and I don't know. We'll see if he takes it to court or he just pays the fine.
Stay tuned.
Yes. Yeah. 48 to 40. He says I was in a 30. I'm debating that. So yes.
Next podcast episode might be how to get out of a speeding ticket.
Maybe. Yeah. All right. So then we have one more here. Plan your retirement income, right? So that's kind of one of the second to last bullet points that we have. What do you want to say on that?
I would just say you're going to have different buckets of money to pull from. So if you're meeting with us early on before retirement, we're building up a tax deferred bucket. That might be your 401k, your IRAs. We're planning a tax free bucket. It could be your Roth IRAs, Roth 401ks, HSA, and then a taxable bucket. That'll be like the bridge account that we always talk about, your non-retirement. So it's kind of juggling those 3 different buckets and where we're going to pull from each month. Because, for example, if you have $1 million 401k and you're taking distributions from only there, you're going to push yourself in a higher tax bracket. So it's like, how do we bridge those 3 buckets and do it in the most tax efficient way possible? And we'll have to take into account, too, your other income sources. That might be your pension, your Social Security. Maybe you have annuity as well. So that's kind of just a brief overview of your retirement income picture.
Yep. And then I just want to add one piece of that, right? So if we're talking about 401ks or IRAs, remember, the IRS is your business partner, essentially, on those accounts, right? Some may say that they're an anchor, holding you back, so to speak as well. But, so even if you have $1 million balance, all $1 million is not really your money, right? We owe, you're going to have to pay taxes on those monies as it comes out. So that's another piece of knowing your numbers, like, at face value, you're like, hey, I got $1 million. Yeah, but do you really? And, so you have to know that. And so that's one of those things that we do. And obviously when we're going through the planning process, our simulations are also accounting for tax estimates and tax withdrawals. So we are kind of hitting your 401k harder in our illustrations, planning for some of that tax hit that you're going to take along the way. And then to George's point, if you're only taking money out of an IRA or 401k, well, obviously then that tax hit is going to be bigger. Whereas if you have those other buckets set up ahead of time, then we're able to maybe piecemeal some of that together and not take such a big tax hit along the way.
So yeah, like if your base case might be 100,000, that means you might need gross 130,000 because you got to count for taxes to get to that 100,000, and that's something behind the scenes we're double checking with our software. Ryan's putting in e-money during the meetings. We'll show it to you live on the screen so we can review it with you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's one thing to have a big nest egg, but it's another thing to have a great plan along with it. Like George said, you have all these buckets to pull it from. Say you need 10 grand to go on vacation. We'll help you decide where the best time or where the best places to pull that money from.
Yeah, and there's a lot of boring number stuff. That's what we love to do and help people plan, but also take the time to dream. Like, what do you envision? Like, what's a perfect day to you? Is it, spending time with your family? Is it traveling? Is it golfing? Envision that before you retire so you don't wake up day one of retirement like, well, what am I going to do? Like, you need purpose. You need to have something driving you. So that's another thing that you're going to want to plan for as you lead into retirement.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And then it's I always like to say too, like, the first couple years of retirement are fun to watch clients and couples just because, there might be a couple more fights. There might be, hey, you're home now, and I'm used to having this kind of peaceful house, and now all of a sudden the husband for the first time, or the wife, either way, it doesn't matter. Somebody's rearranging the closet. Somebody's rearranging, the soup cans in the kitchen and all the things, and so yeah, you don't want to be necessarily hanging out all day at the house, annoying your spouse either. Right. So you got to figure out what do you want to do? Where you want to go? What, do you want to travel a lot? Does that involve a second house? Or you bounce it back between 2 locations or 3 locations? Are you visiting the kids? Where do they live? How far you have to go for that? What does that cost? Right. So, I mean, there's a lot that goes into it. It's not just, at face value. Yes, it's like, hey, I don't have to report to whatever anymore. And I can flip off my boss, which is nice. You guys better not flip me off, by the way. But that's a fun time, right? But yeah, you got to think about all these things. And us as planners, well, I think that's just what we naturally do. We're pretty good at seeing around those corners before you have to see around them. But nonetheless, that's what we want you to do, is start to kind of figure out all these different angles of where things are coming from, where life is coming from, and and then all that stuff obviously has a dollar figure attached to it too. So if you're like, yeah, my kids live in Boston, I want to go to Boston twice a year, 3 times a year. Well, what's that trip cost? Are you driving or are you flying? Like, what, we could figure all that out. So, but to George's point originally on this is more so the fun part of it, right? Is just you can't, it's not just sit home all day, and you do have to have some sort of guiding principle or purpose. Yeah, you got to have some purpose, right? And there's a lot more data that surrounds that today too, that you have to have purpose, in what you do, whether it be volunteering or doing more charitable type work and having some fun there. So, yeah.
Yeah, because you go from working maybe 40 hours a week your whole life, and you got to fill those hours with stuff you love to do. And now's the time you control your day, you control your time. I think it's one of the best freedoms to do whatever you want when you want.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and use your money as a tool. Like, it should be where you connect your financial plan to your dream life. It's what you were working towards your whole life.
Yeah. And what are some of the things that you guys think when you do reach that age? Like, what is something that you envision yourself doing?
Well, that's it.
Well, I'm the closest to it naturally, right? So,
yeah.
What's your purpose, Phil?
Well, again, obviously I help, local baseball, softball program. I help the high school with a number of things, help work concessions there and raise money for youth sports and whatnot. So I would think I would continue on those fronts. Yeah, I would still continue to do some of those for a while. I like giving back more to the community. I have a little bit more of personally, I like to give to what I'd like to call the people within my 200 sphere of people that I know, that I can kind of bump into at the store, I guess. And whereas I know other people might say, I want to give to the American Cancer Society. And if you've been affected by that, it's an amazing cause, obviously, right? But for me, I want it to be more local, more small business. I mean, even though these charities are not small business, just the stuff that's more grassroots, local. That's kind of where my thing is. So I would say volunteering. We already do the tractor work and get out there on the fields. So I would probably be doing some of that and raking, playing in the dirt, trying to prep games for, so some kid 10 years from now can show up and get in that batter's box and think he's Babe Ruth. That's kind of what I want to do.
I could still see you coming in the office, a couple times a week. You're like, hey, what are you guys working on this week? What's the new project? What's the new puzzle we got to solve? And I feel like that it just keeps you stimulated, keeps you active, and keeps you going.
Totally, yeah. But then on the other side too, there is Lazy Phil, and Lazy Phil likes to sit in the beach and go to a pool chair and go to the pool bar and that kind of thing too. But yeah, so I mean, I would say more realistically, I could see myself going from here to a sunnier location and going back and forth. But we'll always be here in Chicago for sure. But then having other places that we vacation to. But I would say the general purpose would be probably giving back to local community things that are going to benefit youth, and youth sports is probably my thing at this point.
Yeah, no, I think that's amazing. And I feel like that's something as you're leading up to, you're going to think about more and more. I know for me personally, I want to be around my family, hopefully one day I have some grandkids. Maybe I have a lake house I can bring the family to. I can take them on some trips. I know I'm going to have to keep busy. I always love, it's kind of a hobby of mine, even outside of work, just, finding different deals, buying, selling, stuff like that. I always love negotiating, doing that back and forth. I love to be active. I want to be outside, working out, playing basketball, stuff like that. But I'd say the main one for me is just hopefully, Sophia, if you're listening, hopefully I got some grandkids by that point. And, I got people to hang out with.
Yeah, I got a while before retirement, so only 24, so I got another couple years, a lot of years. But, it's just like spending time with family, being able to travel whenever you want, golf whenever I want, just those type of things, enjoy myself, kind of.
Yep. And then let's again, you are at the other end of the spectrum, right? But we started the podcast saying, this is really for those within 5 years of retirement, but anybody should be paying attention, whether you're 22 or 28, you're 24. Obviously, you are an employee here, but what are you doing here? Obviously, you're contributing to what?
I'm maxing out my 401k, Roth IRA, my taxable account, so live very modestly right now. Don't really spend too much. But yeah, because I want that big picture goal and be able to do what I want to do. And sorry, but not listen to Phil every day. But
no, that's fair. That's fair enough.
And Ryan's done an amazing job about that. He's young. He's putting money away. He has the right mindset. He's thinking about the long game. Where a lot of kids I meet his age, it's just hey, what club are you going to this weekend? What game are we betting on? That's all. Their life revolves around that. And Ryan is very mature for his age, thinking ahead like that.
Yeah, but I can say that for both of you, right? So you both you started working with me out of college.
Yep.
And then obviously you started working with me out of college. We've had the 401k plan for some time. You've always maxed out every year your contributions. Mm-hmm. You've always maxed out your contributions. We like to tell people, young people, now again, different than what this episode's really about, but as long as if you're listening, right, the young ones, we like to say as a general rule, minimum you should be saving 10%. Ideally, that number is closer to 20%. And obviously, if you're maxing out your 401k plans, you're actually exceeding that 20% figure while you're young anyways now. And now that George is earning a little bit higher income, he may not be at that 20% figure anymore. He's got some other expenses. Mm-hmm. But either way, from a young age, you didn't go at it part-time-ish with I can only do 3% of my thing. No. You hit it hard, and you both have been hitting it hard from a young age, which also then on the flip side, you suppressed your expenses, you suppressed your need, and you essentially then have lived within your means since you started and graduated college.
Yeah, and it's very easy early on. It's not out of the question to save 50% of your income right off the bat because you don't have a ton of expenses. When I was out of college, my rent was low. I didn't have property taxes. I didn't have kids. I didn't have a lot of the expenses I have now, multiple cars, stuff of that nature. So the sky's the limit. So really just, put some pressure on yourself to put a lot away. And then, as you get older, it gets harder. But as long as you budget correctly, you should still be able to save 15, 20% of your income.
Yeah, when I was first starting out, it was very new to me. And I had an advisor, George, who has been doing this for a couple of years, and he kind of took me under his wing and told me, yeah, if you do this, this, and this, you'll be set. So
Yeah, it gives you a lot more flexibility now too. Even for Ryan, like he's got options now. Like if he's looking to buy a place or rent a place, he doesn't have to do something. He can do whatever he's want because he's been disciplined. He's put that money away. He has that flexibility now. So it's never too early to start and get on the right track.
Yeah. And again, this is episode 3. We are, I think we've now said this in every episode. I'm going to say it, it's only 3 for 3, but right. The 3 things you got to do to build assets, right? You got to be in the market, either stock market, real estate, or own a business. But again, if you're employees, you can participate in the market through your 401k employer plans, and you can maximize those. And you can end up building a significant pile of money. You could end up do the bridge or that after-tax investment, that non-retirement account that we like to talk about. We nickname it the bridge because it's the bridge to retirement. It's the bridge to early retirement. You can get at that money before 59 and a half and some other things. It's emergency fund backup, college backup, retirement backup. It's the most flexible structure. It's actually the hardest piece to build. But if you start doing that while you're young, you're building those assets, right? You're doing one of the 3s, even as an employee, and eventually then you could tell your employer, hey, I'm out of here, and you better not tell me that. But essentially,
the concept's still the same. Whether you're 60 and you're close to retirement or you're just out of college, you're finding every dollar, as we keep talking about, needs a home. Those homes might be a little bit different as you get older, and those assets might be a little bit larger, so the stakes are higher, but the concept's still the same. Like you're navigating it, you're putting money in bucket A, bucket B, bucket C that best fits your goals and what you're trying to achieve.
Yep. So then wrapping up too, right? So back to, again, you're thinking about retirement, you're in that last 5 years, and you're like, hey, I think I want to do this. So we've got, one, you got to run your numbers. Remember, compound interest is your friend. Now is the time to optimize your portfolio, knock out those big expenses while you're still working, take advantage of those employer-sponsored healthcare plans, get a clear picture of retirement expenses, plan your retirement income, and take the time to dream, right? Those are the big ones. So I think if you could do those, you'll be well on track to actually enjoy retirement, not be stressed out, not be fighting with the dog or your wife, so to speak. So yeah, you got to know these things, and this will help keep you healthy and make retirement totally enjoyable to do whatever you want to do.
Yeah, planning ahead can take a lot of the stress out of it.
So anything you want to add there, Ryan?
I'd say if you're 5 years out from retirement, schedule a review with an advisor. It takes work to be successful in retirement. It's not a 1 year or 6 months before. It's those 5 years before, 5 to 10 years even.
Yep. Yeah, and it's very good. So thank you again for tuning in to another podcast. Hopefully we're getting a little better at this, a little more comfortable. Like I said, we're trying to do 1% better every time. And plan to rise above, powered by PMG Wealth Management. Good job, you two. We will see you on episode 4. And don't forget to comment, like, and share, subscribe. All those good things. We're brand new to this, so cut us some slack. But at the same time, we will see you all soon. Very good.
There we go.
Very nice.
Very nice. All right. Thank you, everybody.